What is up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Just a Minute. I'm your host, Austin Smith, and as always, I'm joined by the HoopSeen Editor-In-Chief himself, Mr. Justin Young is in the building. JY, what's up, brother? How you feeling?
I'm good, Austin. I'm great. I feel like we do this like every day, but the season's been so quick that it's like, it's a week in between doing these things. But yeah, I'm doing great, man. Season's been so good, so fast, and I'm always excited to talk with you.
Absolutely, brother. I mean, games are going by, so much content. I mean, It's getting real, man. I'm loving it. Tons of stuff going on right now, man.
I know there's so much to talk about. And like the fact that like we call this just a minute, there's no way. It should be like just an hour is what it should be.
Pretty much for the most part, man. So, JY, look, let's go ahead and get right to it, man. Let's not keep the people waiting. Biggest thing from Atlanta Jam, obviously, is that, we had some coaches, some non-D1 coaches in attendance, right? And I think that's huge, man, for players to finally be able to get a taste of what maybe a live period will feel like in a normal travel ball season. Let's talk about that, man. We saw some schools at Atlanta Jam. I know there's going to be plenty of more at the Grassroots Showcase, man. What are your thoughts regarding that?
Yeah, I mean, it was really exciting. I watched the stream through Be the Beast out here on the West Coast, was taking in all the action. I was getting up at 5 a.m. watching the stream on Saturday and Sunday. But the thing that got me really energized and really kind of caffeinated was seeing those college coaches down there on the baseline, which we're so used to seeing for the Atlanta Jam. From end to end at Swanee Sports Academy, it's full of college coaches. And it was really good to see some familiar faces from the non-Division I level, a lot of D2s, D3s, NAIs, junior colleges. Maybe not as many junior colleges because they were still playing in their season. But a lot of coaches were back in the building. We hear that the college coaches can't come out. And I want to kind of debunk that. They can go out. Not right. Division I guys can't go out, but that doesn't necessarily mean that other coaches from other divisions can't be out there. And we have plenty of guys that can fill the bill for those divisions, particularly unsigned seniors, which I think we have a really good group of unsigned seniors and a really good group that play at the Atlanta Jam. Of course, you can catch all that coverage on HoopSeen.com right now for some of those guys if you're looking for a sleeper. So you can find those guys on HoopSeen right now. But I wanted to kind of talk about that because it doesn't mean that every coach is off the road.
Right.
They can be out there on the road, and we're seeing that more and more teams are getting out there and they're putting coaches out on the sidelines and they come to events like ours. And I think we'll see them again in Louisville next week or in 2 weeks, I guess.
Jerry, let me ask you this, man, because obviously you talk to coaches all the time. What are the coaches looking for this year? What if you could define one thing, what do you think they've been looking for in players from this summer?
Across the board, no matter the level, whether it's the Gonzagas and Baylors and Dukes and Carolinas and Kentuckys, or whether it's Life University, like the NAIAs, whether it's South Georgia Tech, whether it's Scottsdale Community College out here on the West Coast, every level in between. Can I find a guy that's an impact player?
Yeah.
Which I think can be open for a lot of interpretations. I mean, does that mean that that's somebody that's going to come in and guard somebody right away that can give that? Does it mean that player is a 3-and-D? Is that somebody that's going to be an elite shooter, an elite scorer? So every school is different for what their impact is.
Yeah.
But I think and you work with guys all the time, like be consistent in your effort.
Yeah.
Right? Like how many times did you say that sort of narrative to when you're working with guys?
Oh my gosh, like all the time. I mean, this 60, 75-minute workout, like let's be at peak performance as much as possible, man. Consistency is key.
It really is. And like, I've kind of pivoted watching games at the Bama Jam and the Atlanta Jam on the stream. And I've gone back to the tip-off and other events that other people use on streaming services. And I find myself like, I go there specifically to watch one player, okay? And then you end up watching somebody else because that player has been so consistent throughout the game. Funny story, let me kind of go off. And I know we said off air that I want to keep this shorter. Right. I can't help myself. But I work for the legendary Tony Ingle, who just passed away in the last month or two from COVID. And it is a dear friend of mine and somebody that really was a huge mentor for me. And I learned something working with Coach Ingle and his staff. He had a really great staff when I was at Kennesaw a long time ago. This is before they even won a national championship. Yeah. And this is when we'd get like VHS tapes and like true story, like people would send, I worked in the sports information office at the time. And I'd come into the office and there would be fax machines. Would be faxes of like these one sheets for prospects all over the country. And like, we never looked, we just threw them away. Like, I hate to be so blunt, but like we threw them away. And, but anyways, we got a VHS on a player from South Florida that the staff was looking at. And they were like, wait a second, like that guy's fine, but we want to know who that guy is.
Right.
And that guy happened to be the starting four-man for the national championship team, a guy named Georgie Joseph, who's had an unbelievable European career, probably a dozen years playing overseas. He played against my brother. So my brother ran into him when they were in France, I think, when Kevin was coaching out there. But I always think about that, about being consistent no matter what, because you never know who's watching and what they're watching. And going back to the original question that you asked, what they're looking for.
Sure.
So for Kennesaw, in that instance, they needed a junkyard dog. They needed a rebounder. They didn't need so much an instant impact three-point shooter, but be consistent in the skill that you're great at.
Right.
Like when you work with guys, like if you're working with a big, like how much are you spending time on things that he isn't good at?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Rarely. So like, I think that's the number one thing. Like, can the player help us right away as a prospect? And I think that is so open. But if you're a player, go, okay, I'm a tremendous foul. Like I can get to the line. I can touch the paint with the dribble. So be great in that very one thing, because that's where you're going to help the team at the one thing that you're really great at. And with the transfer portal, it's sped up the process of development. So you've got to be able to come in and like, I love a Swiss Army knife player. I think everybody does. But like, what's the sharpest blade in the Swiss Army knife? And I think that's what you got to figure out right now.
Right. Yeah, I totally agree, man. When guys are able to lock in on, what they do best, it makes your recruitment better, simply because of the fact that you're isolated on that one thing that can get you recruited, and one thing that makes you maybe better than everybody else. Jay, well, let's keep it moving. Power rankings, right? Like you mentioned last week, you had your JWOP power rankings coming out. Let's go.
The unofficial eyeball test. That's what it is, man. I want to get it sponsored by Warby Parker. Like, hook me up with some new glasses, Warby Parker. Like, let's get this sponsored.
Sponsorship deal needed. All right, JWOP. So Florida Pro still, after the tip-off, is like probably the best we've seen. We had a big news this past week with Manimal Elite jumping on board in the HoopSeen Association. With those two teams, what are other two teams, man, that got to be like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, if not a top 5 ranking, but that are up there that you've seen so far?
Yeah, that's a great question. I've spent a lot of time staring at an Excel sheet like all morning long going, okay. So we've got the data through the U.S. Amateur Basketball power rankings. It's all, it's all algorithm. It's things that's way smarter than me. Like I'm like, is it pretty? I'm like, all right, that's what I want. And then I also go off of what I've seen at really early hours of the morning watching streams. Yeah. And then I go over just like wins and losses and who they beat. And so like Manimal, tremendous team. And I know you had that exclusive with them, that sit down as they announced they're part of our league. Can't wait to have them in Louisville with us. But they didn't beat any association teams. They didn't have an association schedule. So like I do have to put that in some consideration. But I think Florida Pro, no doubt, like the Thompson twins, the Hendricks twins, that really good group of guys. I think that's the gold standard in which we have right now. We've seen them play other events and take care of business. But I think after that, I still really like Team Spates out of Florida. I think they've got some great guard play. They've got obviously some consistency of being really good. They're a program that is not afraid of playing high-level competition. We're going to see them be challenged quite a bit at the Grassroots Showcase in Louisville coming up. But for me, my eyeball test, I think they're number 2, particularly on the strength of Jamar Franklin, their guards. They've got some really good size. Again, college coaches, I don't want to give away all the secrets, but go look at Team Spates. They've got an available 6'9" big with grades. Hint, go to Be the Beast and go watch that film from the HoopSeen tip-off. I think you'll be really happy with that. But from there, I think we've got a number of teams. I've got Manimal, who I really, really liked. Did you watch them over the weekend?
I was able to catch one game in between doing some interviews. I was able to catch a little bit of one game, and I was.
Yeah, what struck you about them? Yeah.
I think the fact that here's the biggest thing for me, and this is why I love the HoopSeen Association. Teams from other states, they come to Atlanta to play, and so there's a toughness with them that you immediately see them on the floor, and I think they've got. I think his name's Christian, I believe. Is that? Yeah. Is Christian Spalding on the part of their? I believe he's part of their team.
Yeah. Forgive me. Starling, I think is his last name. Spalding. Spalding.
Kid can go. Can go.
Really
man.
tough.
He played. He was for the few minutes I watched. He was obviously a player I was keyed in on. So and they got other pieces too on their roster, man. That just make you say, this is an interesting piece to add to the HoopSeen Association now. You know what I mean? So.
I like them a lot. They're really long. Their guard play is really good. Tremendous positional size. I think James Jewell is one of our highest upside prospects that we have in the HSA. They're right there. I think what you look what the Atlanta All-Stars did over the weekend, really, really good. huge wins that they put together. I think that win over Tennessee Tigers was a tremendous win. They had a big win over Griffin Elite that I watched as well. I thought they put together a really, really good weekend. I love Christian Drummer, their point guard. I think is a guy that could be the next guy that plays for Coach Ben Miller that becomes a really high level, non-major basketball, like a low major, mid-major contender team that he's always seemed to have on his roster. I thought they were really good. I thought they made probably the biggest jump. They're 7-1 now after 2 events at the Atlanta Jam and the Bama Jam. So I've got them moved up. I think that Florida Pro unsigned senior team as well. They're in there at 3-1. I really like the improvement. CP25 Alabama, Mississippi, I really liked already. Mm-hmm. But every week they get better and better and better.
Yes.
I think Jabari McGee, how do you guard that dude?
Man, listen.
And then he guards so many other guys.
Listen, you get him, and you still gotta remember Tremaine,
Trey Dixon,
yeah. I mean, like, they've got players, man. And you start adding them into mix. Him and Jabari McGee give you a nice little backcourt tandem. You know what I mean? And it makes them competitors. You got to watch out.
Well, they're 11-3. They're 11-3 so far with us this year, which is the most wins of any team in the HSA. They've also played the most events out of everybody. Right. But 11-3 is something, as you go into Louisville, we want to put them up against some teams from NYLA that we're going to meet with, some teams from Wisconsin, Minnesota, Chicago, somewhere in the Midwest. Give them a new variety of teams to go compete against, and I really want to see how they operate there. So I really love what they've done. Tennessee Tigers, we know they're going to be consistent. They're 8-2. I think they're still within my top 6 of the group. Some new additions that we have for the first time this year was PSB Elite out of Charlotte. Love those guys. They've got tremendous guards, guys I think would be really good, like SoCon level guards. Justin Byerly's done a great job of reporting on them so far on HoopSeen. Hawks Elite, they're a team with a lot of interesting guys.
Right.
A lot of interesting guys. Also, they've played 15 games already with us on the circuit, played every event that we've done. They've really had a tough schedule already, but they've got 7 wins so far on the season. But they've got some guys, again, every week they get better and better and better. And then rounding out my top 10 based on what I've seen of the Tennessee Blazers out of Memphis, they were really good in Alabama, 4-1, if I remember correctly. I'm excited to see those guys up in Louisville as well and challenge them. We always have really good teams from Memphis or Memphis-based players, and that Tennessee Blazers team is going to be one of those teams as well. So that, to me, is the top 10 team. Make sure I saw everybody on my list. Mm-hmm. We talked about. Yeah, those are the top 10 teams that I've seen so far on the season. We've got a number of guys on the peripheral. Griffin Elite out of Kentucky. I think that was really their first major event. They had a chance to compete, so I'm excited to see those guys again. But I also didn't want to forget, and this is something that I think that we have to do a really good job of recognizing week-to-week improvement.
Yeah.
I thought PSB Atlanta, from the week that they played with us at tip-off to where they were, flipped it all around.
Bruh.
Did you see them?
Yes. I got a chance to see them for a second. They even had a guy that made top performer like that. Man, listen, credit to Jay Mose, man. I had a conversation with Jay Mose, and he was literally, and for everyone watching, that's Jonathan Mosley, who's the director of PSB Atlanta. But he talked about simply how Austin, man, we realized after that first event, for us, it was just a matter of, hey, let's get back in the gym. Let's work on a few things. Now we've seen what we need to work on. Let's really get back in the lab and do it. And they did just that, man. Kudos to them.
Yeah, I agree. And that's what it's all about, is recognizing where you can get better. And we can't discount the fact, going back to what we talked about just a second ago, about being an instant impact guy. Right. Part of that is development. And part of that is probably, I would imagine that him and Coach Raphael Davis step back and go, okay, what are we really good at?
Yeah.
Let's focus on that. Okay, and lean on that experience and move forward with that. I thought that was really important. A couple other notes that I want to bring up. I thought God's Property also had a really good weekend, good flip around weekend for them. Of course, we know with D Favors, they're always going to have tremendous guard play. Hype Hawks are always going to be really talented. If you're a college coach and you're watching this right now, go back and watch Bang Up film from this past weekend. Okay, trust me, they got a dude on their team that I think is one of the best available seniors on the East Coast. He played really, really well. I don't want to give it all away. Go watch the film, Bang Up Elite. His last name, whatever, Dana Woodley. Go watch Dana Woodley. Go recruit that dude. He's really good. And then also one last shout out, Team Rampage out of California. Love those guys. Great to have that team from the Bay Area. Make it all the way out to Atlanta. I want to make sure we got them taken care of as well. Some big time players. They got available seniors And also, if you check our top performers, they've got some of the top performers. And Team Petway, sorry, out of Connecticut, that came down too. So I got to get all the shout outs in before I forget. That's what happens to get old, Austin.
No, you're good, man. I totally get it. Here's something that's really interesting too. Like you mentioned a ton of the HSA teams, and then you've even got teams like, for example, like Carolina Pressure. Like D Favors came out on this in the first 2 weeks. Then Carolina Pressure comes back and gets a big deal with them. So it's really, man, these HSA teams, you really never know who's going to be who on any given day. And I think that's the beauty of it, especially heading into Kentucky. Everybody's on a mission to prove what they can do heading into Louisville, man.
That's it. Like, if you look at our standing, there's so many teams that are 500 record right now. And that's just because of the parity of the league. I mean, Ball for Life came up and played really, really well. We got a new addition with TMP out of the Charleston, South Carolina team that's got some really good players. You mix in like Game Elite Blue, I think, a couple of really good wins. Core 4 with Anthony Harrington and those guys. And so, I mean, you look at all this, and we even talk about going back to the tip-off with the PCH Knight Riders, probably one of the best players in the whole league with Josian Gortman. So there's so many things to talk about. But the middle of the league is so strong. Yeah. It's just like the NBA. Like if you look at the teams in the NBA, it's really, really strong. So I'm really happy with it to where we're at right now.
Absolutely. Well, Jay, let's keep moving, man. We're trying to keep it top of the Just a Minute deal.
I know. So much for that, right?
That's both of us. All right. So our content is online, man. And obviously, everyone watching today, you want to become an insider on HoopSeen.com. There's so much content. There's so much news on players. You can see the latest updates. Coaches do that. Jay, talk about being an insider on HoopSeen.com.
Yeah, go to be an insider. I mean, it's that simple. If you can read our content during the weekend at HoopSeen events, but make sure you become an insider and get the true inside scoop from all of our state guys. We've got a tremendous team. We had Jerome Reed up from Florida doing a lot of work for our HoopSeen Florida site. We've got Andre Whitehead killing it right now with all of our content there in the state of Tennessee. We got DeCortland Christian from Alabama, making sure we get the Capstone State covered. Of course, our guy Justin Biley taking care of the Carolinas, and our team Josh Tech and Brianna Patton getting it all done in Georgia. But if you become a weekly or a monthly subscriber to HoopSeen, you get all the rankings, you get all the exclusive photos that we've got on the site. You get all the content throughout the course of the week to really find out who the top players are. If you're a college coach, it's an unbelievable opportunity to get into our database. It's a monster opportunity for you to really find out who we've got. You can tap into what I'm writing about, what JB's writing about, some of our experienced guys, even Ty Young, our experienced guys, and what they're doing on the scouting part of things. So make sure you're an insider. It's worth it, totally worth it. And if you need value to the grassroots basketball scene, we got you covered from top to bottom. Yes, sir, man. And again, Shay, I want to go back and shout out all of our staff members, man. They do a phenomenal job. They killed it. Yeah. Producing content. JY, man, anything else for the special guest? Shout out to the shirt you got on there, Oh, I may be out and about this weekend, maybe headed to the West. Got a couple things on the schedule coming up. I got to shout out the Drew League out here on the West Coast. I'm trying to become like the people, man. Just trying to become man of the people. That's all. I'm just trying to keep it with Atlanta, trying to keep my West Coast going. So the next thing I'm going to do is run for president, Good deal. Well, JY, man, if you're good, I'm good, brother. Hey, everyone, thanks for tuning in to another edition of Just a Minute. I'm your host, Austin Smith, but the special guy on the screen next to me is our editor-in-chief here at HoopSeen, Justin Young. JY, thanks again, brother.